everyone. Today we will be reading lesson 23 from the second grade Journeys reading book. The story is called The Goat in the Rug by Geraldine. Before we begin, we'll quickly go over the vocabulary from this story. The first word is yarn. People use yarn to knit sweaters, hats, and mittens. Yarn. Here's a picture of yarn. The second word is strands. The strands of yarn are tied into knots at the bottom of this rug. You can see each small string is one strand. The next vocabulary word in this story is spinning. It takes a lot of practice spinning chunks of wool into thin yarn. This is something that usually machines do in the year 2017, but a long time ago the only way to do it was with your hands and a small, simple machine. Dye is the next vocabulary word, D-Y-E. When you spell dye, D-Y-E, dye means to change the color of fabric. These shirts are soaked in dye to make them colorful. The next word is weave. This woman will weave dried grasses into baskets. You can see she's using grass and sewing it with her hands into a certain pattern to make something bigger. You can also weave strands of yarn into a certain pattern to make a larger piece of fabric or a rug. The next word is sharpening. This pencil does not need sharpening anymore. Sharpening means to take something that is dull or broken and make it pointy again. You can see they've already sharpened the pencil in the picture, and now it doesn't need sharpening anymore. The next word is duplicated. Do you know a synonym or another word that means the same thing as duplicated?
Copy.
Copy is a synonym for duplicated. Some colors on this rug are duplicated. They appear again and again. You can see that the colors have the same over and over. They're making the same thing again and again. They're copying the same color. So a synonym for duplicate is copy. The last vocabulary word before we begin to read the story is delicious. What do you think delicious means?
Tastes really good.
Tastes really good, that's right. This baker makes delicious cakes. They are very tasty. Now let's read lesson 23 from the Journeys reading series by Houghton Mifflin Harcourt. The story that we're going to be reading is about Navajo traditions. Navajo is a type of Native American. Navajo traditions. Some Navajo people weave beautiful rugs. First, they make yarn by spinning strands of wool. Then they dye the yarn and weave it into traditional patterns. Many Navajo make jewelry, too. After sharpening their tools, they make jewelry of silver. The Navajo also make delicious traditional stews. A hand-woven rug like this cannot be duplicated. What's another word for duplicate?
Copy. Copy.
Copy. Another word for duplicate is copy. And this traditional rug cannot be duplicated. This woman is weaving on an upright loom. She is turning these strands of yarn into a large piece of fabric or a rug. This is something that most people do not do in the year 2017, but long ago it was the only way to get fabric or a rug. Let's be sure to listen for details in this story so that we can draw conclusions and understand how the story ends. The authors of this book are two men. There are two authors for this story. Charles L. Blood is one author for this story, and Martin Link is another author for this story. They wrote the words. The illustrator of this story is Nancy Winslow Parker. I hope that you're able to read about the author and illustrator of this story. Now let's read The Goat in the Rug by Geraldine. Geraldine was an old-time storyteller who made this story up in the first place. Charles and Martin are retelling it, and it's illustrated by Nancy Winslow Parker. My name is Geraldine, and I live near a place called Window Rock with my Navajo friend, Glen May. It's called Window Rock because it has a big round hole in it that looks like a window open to the sky. Glen May is called Glen May most of the time because it's easier to say than her Indian name, Blinazba. In English, that means something like female warrior, but she's really a Navajo weaver. I guess that's why one day she decided to weave me a rug. I remember it was a warm, sunny afternoon. Glen May had spent most of the morning sharpening a large pair of scissors. See, she's using this metal wheel to make her dull scissors sharp again. I had no idea what she was going to use them for, but it didn't take me long to find out. What do you think Glen May is going to use her large scissors for?
To cut the sheep's hair.
Maybe to cut this animal's hair. A sheep or a goat. It looks like a sheep to me. That seems like a great prediction. Let's turn the page and find out if we can confirm or deny Isaac's prediction that Glen May will use her scissors to cut the sheep's wool. Before I knew what was happening, I was on the ground, and Glen May was clipping off my wool in great long strands. Wait, the narrator or character telling the story says that Glen May is cutting my hair. So who is the narrator of this story? Who's talking if the person says it's my wool?
The sheep is talking.
The sheep is the narrator of this story. So the sheep is Geraldine, and Geraldine is the narrator. Do you think that Glen May is hurting the sheep Geraldine when she's cutting his wool?
No.
I don't think so either. Let's keep reading about Glen May and Geraldine. It's called mohair, really. It didn't hurt at all, but I admit I kicked up my heels some. I'm very ticklish for a goat. What did we just find out about Geraldine? Is Geraldine a sheep?
Yes.
Let's read this sentence again and find out if Geraldine is a sheep. I'm very ticklish for a goat. What kind of animal is Geraldine?
Goat.
Geraldine is a goat. Did you know that you can use the wool from a goat like you can the wool from a sheep?
Yes.
But it's not called wool when it comes from a goat. It's called mohair. I might have looked a little naked and silly afterwards, but my, did I feel nice and cool. So I decided to stick around and see what would happen next. The first thing Glen May did was chop up roots from a yucca plant. The roots made a soapy, rich lather when she mixed them with water. She washed my wool in the suds until it was clean and white. Here's Glen May, and she's washing Geraldine's mohair in the soapy water until it's white. After that, a little bit of me, you might say, was hung up in the sun to dry. When my wool, or mohair, was dry, Glen May took out 2 large square combs with many teeth. By combing my wool between these carding combs, as they're called, she removed any bits of twigs or burrs and straightened out the fibers. She told me it helped make a smoother yarn for spinning. So Glen May is describing to Geraldine what she's going to do with Geraldine's wool. Then Glen May carefully started to spin my wool. Do you remember from the vocabulary words what spin means in this type of sentence? Look at the picture to get a clue what spin means in this sentence. Glen May is turning the goat's mohair or wool into what?
Fabric?
Not fabric just yet. She's turning it into string first. Then Glen May carefully started to spin my wool, one small bundle at a time, into yarn. I was beginning to find out it takes a long while to make a Navajo rug. Again and again Glen May twisted and pulled the wool. Then she spun it around a long thin stick she called a spindle. As she twisted and pulled and spun, the finer, stronger, and smoother the yarn became. So what does the vocabulary word spinning mean?
It means
Turning the wool into
yarn.
Turning the wool into yarn is called spinning, as we see in this picture. A few days later, Glen May and I went for a walk. She said we were going to find some special plants she would use to make dye. I didn't know what dye meant, but it sounded like a picnic to me. I do love to eat plants. That's what got me into trouble. So she's going to look for plants called rabbit brush, wild onion, cliff rose, sumac, juniper, walnuts, and dock. And those plants are what she's going to use to change the color of the yarn. And Geraldine is along for the ride. What do you predict will happen to Geraldine while they're out looking for plants?
The goat might eat them.
The goat might eat them. Let's read and see. While Glen May was out looking for more plants, I ate every one she had already collected in her bucket. Delicious! The next day, Glenmay made me stay home while she walked miles to a store. She said the dye she could buy wasn't the same as the kind she makes from plants, but since I'd made such a pig of myself, it would have to do. I thought he was a goat, not a pig. I was really worried that she would still be angry with me when she got back. She wasn't, though, and pretty soon she had 3 big potfuls of dye boiling over a fire. Then I saw what Glenmay had meant by dyeing. She dipped my white wool into one pot, and it turned pink. She dipped it again. It turned darker pink. By the time she'd finished dipping it in and out and hung it up to dry, it was a beautiful, deep red. After that, she dyed some of my wool brown and some of it black. I couldn't help wondering if those plants I'd eaten would turn all of me the same colors. Do you think Glenmay will, or Geraldine will turn the colors of Glenmay's fabric?
Yes.
Okay, let's read on to confirm or deny Isaac's prediction that Geraldine really will change colors. While I was worrying about that, Glenmay started to make our rug. She took a ball of yarn and wrapped it around 2 poles. I lost count when she'd reached 300 wraps. I guess I was too busy thinking about what it would be like to be the only red, white, black, and brown goat at Willow Rock. It wasn't long before Glenmay had finished wrapping. Then she hung the poles with the yarn on a big wooden frame. It looked like a picture frame made of logs. She called it a loom. Can you say loom?
Loom.
What do you predict she's going to do with the loom?
I think she's gonna put it on the
I predict she will weave the yarn in and out of the ones that went around and around to make a rug. Has Geraldine changed colors yet from the plant she ate?
Nope.
No, not yet. A few strands of black, a few of brown, a few of red, in and out, back and forth, until in a few days the pattern of our rug was clear to see. Our rug grew very slowly, just as every Navajo weaver before her had done for hundreds and hundreds of years. Glenmay formed a design that would never be duplicated.
Okay.
Then, at last, the weaving was finished, but not until I'd checked it quite thoroughly in front and in back did I let Glenmay take our rug off the loom. And you see how she wove the different colors in and out of the around and around yarns to make a beautiful Navajo rug?
Yes.
There was a lot of me in that rug. That's Geraldine talking. I wanted it to be perfect, and it was. Since then, my wool has grown almost long enough for Glenmay and me to make another rug. I hope we do it very soon. because, you see, there aren't too many weavers like Glen May left among the Navajos. And there's only one goat like me, Geraldine. This is a true story of a weaver and her goat who lived in the Navajo Nation at Window Rock, Arizona. Arizona is a state inside the United States of America. I hope that you enjoyed reading about a goat in a rug. Let's quickly review the vocabulary words. Yarn. Yarn is string made from wool. Strands. Strands are the individual pieces of yarn. Spinning. Spinning means turning wool into yarn. Weave. Weave means to move fabric, move yarn, or move grasses in and out in a special pattern to make something larger. Duplicated. Duplicated means copy, or to make it again and again. Dye. Dye means to change the color of fabric. Sharpening. Sharpening means to take something that is dull or broken and make it pointy again. Delicious. Delicious means when something tastes really good. Isaac and I hope that you have enjoyed the story, The Goat in the Rug by Geraldine, as told by Charles L. Blood and Martin Link, illustrated by Nancy Winslow Parker.